Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Stitch Sessions, and happy St. Patty's Day! It's Wednesday, March the 17th, and today is the day of green, which I thought was a perfect color to work on our tutorial today, which is going to be the African flower motif. Now, there is some debate on how the African flower got its name. Some theories are that someone saw this pattern in a South African crochet publication many years back and then just gave it the name the African flower. There are others that say that this motif was created much earlier, I think around the 60s or the 70s, and it's also known in some circles as the paperweight granny. So go figure. Now, whatever you call it, it is such a pretty motif, and I think it's one of the prettiest of the kind of granny type flowered motifs, and it's just such a pretty motif, beautiful for baby blankets, afghans, even scarves and hats and things like that. So in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create your African flower motif, and then also how to add the edging if you are going to do it in a modular project like a blanket. And I just love how this came out. Now, a lot of times people will use 4 different colors, one for the center, one for the petals, one for the trim, and then one for that final hexagon motif at the end. I would like to keep mine a little bit more consistent, especially because I'm going to be using this as an applique for another project. So I'm going to be using 2 colors in this tutorial. So let's get a closer look at the materials we're going to need for our project. Okay, so for the yarn, I am using this beautiful Bebe Love Baby Georgia yarn, and I'm not actually sure who makes it. This was on sale. In fact, I think they were clearing this out. It feels super, super soft. The color is called Baby Mint, and it comes in a skein of 120 grams. Now, I have a funny feeling they might be discontinuing this yarn. It was on sale for like $3. It is a beautiful yarn. It's considered a fine weight yarn. Doesn't really say here, but it's quite thin. Okay, so it's perfect for things like baby projects, things like that. The only thing I will say, a little aside, this yarn is a bit splitty, so I think that's why it was on sale. But you can use any type of yarn you want. More often than not, people are going to use a medium 4-weight yarn. Okay, so that's the yarn I happen to be using for this tutorial today. And then I also had a little bit of scraps left over of this really pretty white yarn. I believe this was a Caron line yarn, and it had just a little bit of sparkle running through, a little bit of tinsel. This was some leftover Christmas yarn from actually a while back. So that's what I'm going to use for my contrasting colors, and that is considered a medium 4, although it's a little bit on the thinner side. Okay, but like I said, you can use any weighted yarn that you choose. And also for this project, I am going to be using a 4mm hook, also known as a G or a size 6. Okay, and as always, you want to make sure that you have a handy pair of scissors and a trusty darning needle to sew in your ends at the end. So let's get cooking on creating our beautiful African flower motif. Okay, so to create our motif, we want to start with the center. We are going to be working in the rounds, and we're going to begin with this little center piece here. Now, as you can see, my center sits tightly shut. Some people, if you have an issue using the cinch circle, you can certainly use like a chain 4 or chain 5 circle. Like a little ring in the center. I personally have a preference of using the cinch circle, so that's what I'm going to use for this project, but you can certainly use that chain 4 method. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to start with my cinch circle. Okay, so just like that. Looks similar to starting a slip knot. I'm going to pull up that loop, but I'm not going to cinch that shut. I'm now going to chain 1 to secure that ring. So it's quite large there, but I just wanted you guys to see that. I'm going to take my tail aside here. And now I'm going to chain up an additional 2. 1 and 2. Okay. So this, we now have 3 chains here. This will count as a double crochet. So what we're going to do next is we're going to place a double crochet into the center of our ring. Okay, so now technically we have 2 stitches in the center of our ring. We have that chain 3 and we have a double crochet. So as you can see here, we have little sections or clusters of double crochets. So this is going to be similar to a granny type of motif. The difference is our clusters are not going to have 3 double crochets. They're only going to have 2. So we're going to create 6 of these groupings. Okay. So we've already created our first grouping. So we have our chain 3 and our double crochet. And to separate each grouping, we're going to chain 1. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're now going to place 2 double crochets back into the ring. So you insert, that's a 1 double crochet, and now we're going to place 1 more into the center of the circle. Okay, and see that chain 1, whoops, helped separate them. So now you have 2 clusters. You need to do a chain 1. And you're going to create your next cluster. So 2 double crochets, whoops, into the ring, 1 more. And then chain 1. Okay, whoops. So now I have 3 of these clusters. So you're going to do this 3 more times until you have 6 clusters. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and I'll meet back up with you when you finish doing all of your clusters. Okay, I've just finished my 6th cluster, and now I've done my chain 1. So I have 6 clusters of 2 plus a chain 1 in between each one. Okay, now you probably can't see it just clear enough yet. But what we're going to do now is, if you've used the cinch circle method, I'm going to just pull on my tail here, just like that. And I'm going to cinch, whoops, my center shut. So it's nice and close together. And now I'm going to close off this round by finding that chain 3 we did at the beginning. Okay, and at the very top of that chain 3, I'm going to slip stitch to join the yarn. Sorry, to join the round, just like that. Then I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to snip off my yarn. So round 1, or the center of our flower, is complete. And I don't need a long chain there. I'm just going to pull that through, just like that. Okay, so right now it just looks like a big old circle, but if you really kind of stretch it out a little bit, you should be able to see where all those pretty segments are sitting, okay? And so that is the center here. So now we're going to actually start on round 2, which is creating the base of the petals, okay? So round 1 is done, so we're going to leave that white aside. And we're going to pick up our next color, which in my case is the green or the mint. Okay, and we're going to start off by placing a slip knot on our hook again. Okay, then you're going to find a spot and you're going to slip stitch to join your yarn. Now where we're going to join is anywhere in the chain 1 spaces, okay? And by the way, if these tails bother you, feel free to weave them in before continuing on. I like to just work over mine. So I'm going to start off in this segment here and in this chain 1 space, whoops, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join my yarn. Just like that. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3. Whoops. 1, 2, and 3. So you can see this yarn is a little bit thinner than the other. Then I'm going to go back into the same chain 1 space and I'm going to place a double crochet. So I'm going to yarn over, insert, and work over that tail. Pull through 2 and pull through 2. Whoops. Okay, so now I have my chain 3 plus a double crochet. So what we're trying to do in each space is create a corner. So in order to create a corner, we need to chain 2 and then go back into the same space we just worked in and place another 2 double crochets. So right back into that space. There's 1 and there's 2. So you can see it's created this little kind of V shape, okay? And that is the base, right here you can see, that is the base of our petal. So it's basically a V stitch using 2 double crochets on each side. That's what we're gonna do into each chain 1 spacer, okay? So once we've done our V, so once we've done the base of our petal, we're going to chain 1 in between each petal. We're going to go into the next chain 1 space. Again, I'm just going to keep working over this tail. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to place 2 double crochets into that chain 1 space. So I've got my 2 double crochets, and then I'm going to chain 2, because remember we're creating a corner. And then I'm going to go back into that same space and do another 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. Okay, and there you have another V formation or corner. Okay, and that's what you're going to do into all of your chain spaces. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to chain 1 in between each. And then again, one more time, I'm going to go into that next space. And since that's white, I'm going to work over that tail. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and another 2 double crochets, oops, back into the same space. Okay, so now you can really see that we're starting to create these corners, just like that. Okay, so you're going to chain 1 into the next space, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, etc., all the way around. And by placing these V-like shapes in here, you can see that now the center of our flower is really starting to come to life. Okay, so go ahead and finish your round 2. Okay, so I've just finished my last corner, chained 1. Now to connect my round, I'm going to find that first chain 3, and the top of that chain 3, I'm just going to slip stitch to join my round. Okay, and this time we're not going to snip our yarn because we're going to use the same color going into round 3. So that's what your work is looking like right now. And you should really be seeing the hexagon shape taking form here. Okay. And so now what we're going to do in round 3 is we're going to create the little rounded edging of our petal, right? So we've just formed the V's, and in round 3, we're going to form the top part of that petal. So pretty. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to work our way into the chain 2 space. So just going to slip stitch my way over. So I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch, and now I'm going to slip stitch into the space. Very similar to when we're working on granny motifs, okay? Once you're into the space, you want to chain 3. This will count as a double crochet. And now we're going to double crochet 6 more times into our chain 2 space. And I know you're thinking that sounds like a lot, but that is what's going to create that beautiful fanned out petal look. Okay. Now remember, your like I said, the chain 3 does count as one of your double crochets. So now I've done 4. There's 5, 6. Whoops. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need 7 in total. So the chain 3 counts as 1, plus we needed an additional 6, right? And there is the top part of our petal. And now we're going to chain 1 for our spacer between petals. And we're going to go into the very next chain 2 space and place 7 double crochets into that spot there. And that is what we're going to do into every single chain 2 space, is place 7 double crochets, and that's going to form the top rounded edge of our petals. So pretty. So I'm just whipping through this here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Another one. 6 and 7. Okay, and then we chain 1 to create a space between all of the petals. Okay, so this is what you're going to do for all of round 3. So continue on doing that into each chain 2 space, and I'll meet back up with you when you're ready to close off round 3 of your African flower. Okay, I've just finished my last set of 7 double crochets. I've chained 1 for my spacer. Now I'm ready to close off my round. So I want to find the top of that chain 3 again, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join. Just like that. I'll chain 1, and I'm going to snip off my yarn again. And round 3 is complete. Now, of course, keep in mind that when you have thicker yarn or a heavier weight yarn, like maybe you're going to use a bit more substantial weighted 4, or even if you go to a bulky size 5, your African flower obviously will increase in size. And of course, if you use a larger hook size as well. So here we go. For now, we've got 3 rounds done. We've got our center, the base of our petals, and now the top formations of our petals. Now it's looking really pretty, but it's not quite looking like a flower just yet. And this is where round 4 comes into play, because this is where we just use this nice little single crochet border with our spike stitch, and that's what really scrunches these sides down and creates that beautiful petal formation. So it looks like round 2 and round 3 are all together. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'm going to pick up my contrasting color. So I'm using my white. You may be using a third color. Totally up to you. So I'm going to begin again, as always, by placing a slip knot on my hook. And then I'm going to slip stitch to join. I like slip stitching, not always at the edges of things, but somewhere in the center, because I find it'll make it a little bit easier to then close off the round. So what we're going to do is you're going to slip stitch to join, and we're going to do single crochets. But what I'm going to do a little bit differently in this project is I'm actually going to work into the back loops only. And it's only because I want to create this beautiful little ridge. I want to accentuate that. For the most part in this motif, people would just generally go right away into just the full stitch. But because this yarn is so fine, I think that working into the back loops only will create this beautiful ridge. So I'm just going to show you kind of, I did this similar thing here. So you can see that it's got this, the beautiful ridge is pushing forward. And I just find that it just gives the petals that little extra accentuation there. So that's why I'm going to be working into the back loops only. So that is where I'm going to slip stitch. So I'm going to start right there and I'm going to slip stitch. Okay, then I'm going to chain one, and don't worry, your loops will stretch. That's normal when you're working into the back loops. I'm going to go into the very next stitch and I'm going to single crochet. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do all the way across my fan there. So one single crochet into the back loop of each of these 7 double crochets from the fan. Now once I come to that chain one spacer, this is where we're going to really create the formation of our flower. So we're going to do something called a spike stitch, which is simply when we're going to reach a row or two below the row that we're working on to create a little bit of elongated stitch. So we're still going to work a single crochet, but instead of working into the spacing here in round 3, we're going to go down to round 2. And we're just going to insert our hook into that space there, pull up a loop, and you want to stretch it up a little bit. And then you're going to finish your single crochet as usual. Just like that. So you can see what that did is it just kind of pinched these two sides together, and you can see what that does is it really makes it look like it's all one shape there. Okay, and that little spike effect, that's why we call it a spike stitch, just reaches down a little bit lower and it really traces the outline of the petals so beautifully. So let's do another one. I'm just going to push that tail just to the back. I do want to try and work over it. So we want to do 1 stitch into each of the 7 single crochets. Now this one you got to watch because that's where we knotted our slip stitch. So we don't want to skip a stitch because that will throw off our count. Okay, so that was the top of our chain 3, which was our very first single crochet. Sorry, that tail's getting in the way. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that chain 3 again and just single crochet. And now I'm going to go into the very next stitch, which is right there, and again back loops only. I'm working over my tail there. So that's 2. And here's my last stitch here. Okay, so now you can really see that the edge is really becoming prominent. Looks just beautiful. So now I've come to my chain 1 spacer, and this is where we're going to do another spike stitch. So remember, we're not going to go into this space. We're going to reach down into the row below. Oops, that bit of yarn belongs there. So I'm going to reach into the row below, and that is where I'm going to pick up my loop. I'm going to stretch it up a little bit, and then I'm going to finish my single crochet as usual. So now we've done 2. So now you can really see on each side how it really creates that petal formation. So pretty. And that's pretty much it for round 4. So you're just going to continue on doing single crochets, 1 into each of your 7 double crochets of your fan, spike stitch, 7 single crochets, spike stitch, 7 single crochets, spike stitch, etc. So go ahead and finish round 4, and I'll meet you back up then, and we are almost done our African flower motif. Okay, and I've just done my last single crochet, and now I'm going to insert my hook into that chain 1 that we did at the beginning, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join my yarn there, chain 1 as usual, and snip my yarn. So you don't need any long tails for this project. Whoops. Just like that, pull it through, and we are good. And there you have the flower motif. So in 4 rounds, so here we have it here, same idea, we can create our flower motif. Now, if you're just using it as an applique, you may want to just leave it as such, and then that way the flower portion is what's prominent. Now, if you're using it as part of these modular projects, it is always recommended to add that angular round, which is round 5. And because as you can see, it's 6 petals and it creates that hexagon shape. So very often we have a 5th round that will really solidify the hexagon shape. And that's what we're going to do in round 5, which, like I said, is optional for you. So I'm just going to take you through that now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that contrasting color again, which for me is going to be that green. If you chose a 4th color, that is the color that you're going to be choosing or picking next, okay? If you're using a 4th color, that is going to be the color you are working with next. So I'm going to begin, as always, by placing a slip knot on my hook. And we're going to continue using single crochet stitches. And I'm just going to work into the regular stitches this time. So I'm going to find a spot to insert my hook. And I'm just going to insert my hook there. And I'm going to join my yarn a little differently this time. I'm not going to use a slip stitch. I'm just going to pull it through. And I'm going to single crochet right away. And both methods are good. You can use chain 1 or you can use a single crochet. I just like this because this is going to be my final round. It'll make it a little easier to join at the end. So you'll notice that I started right at the beginning of one of my petals, and I did that on purpose. Remember that we have 7 double crochets in each petal. And so at the tip of the petal, that's where we want to create the corner for our hexagon shape. So what we're going to do is into the next 2 stitches, we're simply going to place a single crochet. 1 and 2. So that gives us 3 of our stitches have a single crochet in it. Now into the 4th stitch, what we want to do is we want to place a single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet again. So this just gives us a little bit more of a corner shape. So it's just a little point there. And now for the remaining 3 stitches in our fan, we're just going to continue placing a single crochet into that stitch. Okay, so we have 1, 2, and 3. And now we're back up to our spike stitch. So you can already see that it formed a little bit of a peak, and now it's really defining the shape of our motif. And it's also really accentuating the ribbing or that little ridge around our petal. I just love that. So now you're going to continue on. So here's a spike stitch. I'm just going to continue on a single crochet into that. And as you can see, that's where I slip stitched to join. So now I'm going to continue on. These are the first 3 stitches of my petal. So that is the first one. So it's going to be a little tighter because that's where I slip stitched. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And now I'm at the 4th stitch, so I'm going to do that corner. So I'm going to do a single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet. Okay, so basically between each of the corner stitches you're creating, you're going to do 7 stitches across. So once I've created my corner, which is in the 4th stitch at the top of my fan, I'm now going to go down the way here. And so now I'm going to go 1, 2, and 7. And then that next stitch, see, it's right at the top of that petal, and that is where I'm going to do my corner. So it's going to be single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet back into that same stitch. Okay, so you can really see your corners forming now. Now, don't panic if your work kind of bunches in a little bit, because it'll need a little bit of blocking, and even just with the heat of your hand, see, it's already going to straighten out. Now, I have to remind you guys that this yarn, and I probably should have used a different type of yarn, is the green is slightly a lighter weight yarn than the white. And this is a perfect example, so in a way this is good I did that, of why you really want to be cognizant of your yarn weights, because when you're using two different types of weights, it will affect how the stitches sit. So you can see a little bit here, it's kind of bunching in, but essentially it should sit flat like that. And now you can really see there's a corner and a corner, okay? So I think you get the idea now. So I've just finished creating my corner, and now I'm going to go down the side here, do 7 single crochets, and in that 8th single crochet, I'm going to do a corner, which is a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. 7 single crochets in the 8th single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, and all the way down. Okay, so go ahead and finish your round 5, and our motif will be complete. Okay, and I've just finished my last stitch, and I'm ready to slip stitch. So I'm going to slip stitch right back into that very first single crochet that we made. Whoops. I'm just going to very loosely slip stitch to join, chain 1, and we are done our hexagon motif. Now, a lot of times, those of you that know me know when I do things like this at the end, I don't do a chain 1. I do like what I call the seamless join. But depending on the project, like if I would be using this for modular projects, I don't worry as much, because I know that when they get sewn together, this little bump here is going to get hidden. So once I sew in that end, here we have it. So now you'll notice a little bit that just still dips a little bit in the sides where we did that spike stitch. Again, that will happen, that may happen. It's more prominent for me because, like I said, my green color was a little bit of a lighter weight yarn, but that's nothing that a little blocking or even using the heat of your hand will not fix. So there we have it. And so that, I just love how that contrasting color just really encapsulates, I guess is the word, that beautiful African flower shape. So that's it. That is the African flower motif. So here's the flower on its own and the flower with the border, the hexagon border. So you can really see the difference. With the border or contrasting colors, it just makes it pop a little bit more and creates a larger effect in size. Now, what I absolutely adore about this motif is it's quick to work up. So it, you guys who know me know I love modular projects. You can just keep whipping these up like crazy and your project will be finished in no time. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick little tutorial on the beautiful African flower motif. If you like this type of material, do me a favor and just give me a thumbs up, and that way it lets me know that you enjoy working on these types of projects, and I will create more for you. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do so that you are up to date every time I upload a new tutorial, which is every Wednesday morning. Come and hang out with me. Jump in on my crochet adventure. All right, my dears, have an amazing day. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next session. Bye-bye.